Hi, Miss Michelle Gray. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Elisa. How are you?
Good. And Eric, I love you so much. I'm sure you're doing fine, right?
He's doing great. He's like, love you, mom.
Love
Hi,
you.
everybody.
Hello. Okay, let's see here. We're going to talk about gut health and disease that has been in the forefront of a lot of research recently. And so I'm going to tell you that I'll read actually something that I wrote when I was uh, offering this service. All right. So the gut microbiome, all the microbes in it, for example, is very complex, and imbalances can lead to all sorts of diseases: physical, mental, emotional, etc. And you know that 70 to 80% of the body's immune system is actually in the gut. And
Mm,
you know that the gut has more neurotransmitters than the brain, with some neurotransmitters being predominantly in the brain, like 95% of serotonin, the feel
mm,
good neurotransmitter, is manufactured and utilized in the gut. It also is the largest endocrine gland because it makes more than 20 hormones. And this is why, here's just a partial list of the diseases that can happen if you have a dysfunctional gut microbiome. And of course, we'll ask the expert Eric, Dr. Eric, in just a minute. Diabetes type 1, diabetes type 2, gestational diabetes, obesity or difficulty losing weight, metabolic syndrome, all autoimmune diseases, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, muscular dystrophy, irritable bowel disease, inflammatory bowel like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, cognitive and memory issues, anxiety, depression, because it's a big, huge gut brain axis there that goes on. Depression, reward or addiction issues, ability to handle stress, the ability to feel happy, Parkinson's disease, autism, uh, uh, cardiovascular disease, including atherosclerosis, hypertension, cerebrovascular disease, liver disease, cirrhosis, hepatitis, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, etc., chronic kidney disease, chronic pulmonary disease, including, this is everything, pulmonary fibrosis, asthma, bronchitis, etc., cancer, Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, attention deficit disorder, almost finished,
mm.
well, that's two, schizophrenia, dysmenorrhea or painful periods, dysfunctional immune system, SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth, allergies, chronic HIV, eczema, long COVID, and really a variety of neurological diseases and disorders. I mean, that's
Wow.
a partial list, man. There we go.
Wow.
And there's research, and the microbiome intent script, which I'm going to make a video of, is 17 pages now. It's like crazy. But anyway, we do have questions. But do you want to share your experiences first, Michelle? I did the microbiome on you and your
I
family.
I would love to. Now, I'm still a work in progress because there's some things I'm noticing that I'm watching on
Yeah, I
my
just did
body.
it on you guys recently.
Yes. Yes. So we're still a work in progress, but there's like little things we're noticing every day. And I said this on the radio show last night with my son Marcus. So Marcus has autism and ADHD and echolalia, and I was trying to think. I'm like, there's been a lot of really good changes with Marcus, but he's had other services done too, and we've seen him go through spurts, like spurts of changes. But one that got me last night was he had this little patch, this little skin patch on his cheek, and it was almost like acne, but we'd get it cleared up and it would come right back, would keep coming back. And I'm thinking, geez, what is this? And over the weekend, it's cleared right up and it's gone. Like it is not
Oh,
there. It's completely gone, which is very interesting. So, and I was just saying to Lisa, I had the best night's sleep I have had in such a long time
that's
last
awesome.
night.
We got to put sleep disturbances on that list. Probably
That
true.
yeah, it is. It is, and Eric says it is. Um, Eric actually is just saying right now, before I tell you about Rob, but Eric is just saying right now that um this for our family, eh, really for anyone, I mean, this is connected to everything. And he says that we're ready for this lift. So, I mean, he says there's more to come. So we'll have more to share over the next month or two
Okay.
in our own family. But the biggest one, of course, is what happened to Rob, and really what's happened to our whole family. And so I've said this before, but for those of you that don't know, Rob was diagnosed with prostate cancer in the end of, I think it was the end of July, beginning of August. And we knew he had prostate cancer. We just didn't know what the stage it was, the
Yeah.
details, that sort of thing. So he had gone for some tests, had some ultrasounds, and he was sent on September the 16th for like a dissection, and that's what they were going to look at, what the next steps were. And so they actually canceled our first appointment where they were going to give us the diagnosis. And it's funny because when they canceled that appointment, I heard, just hold on, just hold
Oh,
on. There's reason for it. There's reason for it. So we are like, okay, that one's canceled. There must be a reason for it. Now, what they said was the results hadn't come in yet. And they
okay.
were surprised that it hadn't come in yet because we were right. They're like, no, I guess there must be backed up. It hasn't come in yet. So they rescheduled it after you had done the microbiome on us.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting is, of course, we didn't even know that was being done. So we didn't know we didn't know the day you
Right.
were doing it or anything else like that. So after you had done the service, and I knew physically that you had done it because of how my body was reacting.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was going pee all day and all night that day. So I knew something was going on. And the next day, we have Rob's appointment, and this doctor, like, this is all he deals with. Like, he deals with prostate cancer, and that is it. So he's very well versed in it. And
Mhm.
he said, I can't believe that I'm going to tell you this. And he goes, this is just like we had to double check. This is amazing. I have never seen this in my career, but you don't have cancer. Like, and they didn't take just 6 samples, which they had said they would. They took 17.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's not like they, didn't take enough samples, because they certainly did.
Yeah.
And he said, we're going to keep an eye on it. We're going to test you
Yeah,
again
of
in 4
course.
months
Of
and
course.
just kind
Yeah.
of see. But he's like, there's nothing else to do right now because as far as we're concerned, you don't have it.
Oh my
And Rob and
God.
I were both like, did we just hear that? Like, did we
That's
just
so
flip
amazing.
into a different timeline? Like, what is, and
And you went out and
Rob,
celebrated, right?
well, we did. We did.
Good.
And so it's really been amazing for us, and it's an amazing testament to this work.
Yeah, the
And
microbiome is just the service is just if you have any chronic condition, I think it's mental, emotional, whatever,
yeah,
physical, I think it's really an important first step, really.
yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. It really
Yeah.
is. And Eric will share with us too, because with everything we're gonna be talking about today, he'll be sharing with us all the different components of, what's going on with our gut and our mind. And like you were just mentioning about the the 3 brains, he says we have 3 brains in our body,
That's
and
true.
how
Hey,
important
yeah,
that is.
you can start off, Eric. Tell us what you know.
Well, he says, mom, he says, thing is that a lot of people are saying, like, this wasn't a problem for, say, my grandparents or for the generation before
Yeah.
that. And he says, but there's so many different things that are affecting our body and how we function. And he says, the number one thing really is our mental and emotional process. And he says that most, if not all, problems with the gut and with a lot of diseases connected to the gut has to do with trauma. Oh, there goes my phone. Sorry.
Good life.
Um, but it has to do with trauma. And he says, and trauma, he says, I want to make sure that we're clear about this. You might be saying, well, I have this and I didn't have any trauma in my life, or I didn't have any trauma in my childhood. And he says, but trauma can be different things to different people, and you have to remember, was something traumatic to you as a child?
Yeah.
So what he's showing me is one person may say, I view trauma as abuse and something very outright that a child can't forget.
Yeah.
And then he says, but there's also trauma that, you know, every person is different. Every person's sensitivity is different. And it's something that they experienced very traumatic that, you know, whether it was teasing or, and that's what he's sharing with me because I went through a lot of that as a child. And so I maybe didn't have that at home, but I went through it in another way. And that did affect my body and did affect, he says, the mind. And it keeps going into the gut saying, think about what your gut instinct. He goes, let's talk about that.
Oh, wow.
Your gut
Yeah.
instinct. He goes, what are all the things that you say? Oh, I can't digest that, or I just can't swallow that. I just
Oh,
can't
yeah.
stomach that.
Wow.
He
Yeah.
says that's that gut, that's where everything starts. He goes, the brain that's in the heart, and he goes, and this is real, guys. He's like, this isn't just like we're saying it. He says there is evidence to prove that the brain talks to the heart, talks to the gut, and he says, and everything in between. So he says the gut is also the esophagus. It's also our intestinal system. So
Mm.
he says it's all connected. So really the root of everything is what we've either carried from family, whether it is in a cellular DNA. So we may have a disposition to something, which is why one person might have something in one way, one might have it in another. And then the component is, what is your trigger?
Yeah.
What has been triggered? Because he says food, um, external is a portion of it. The
Yeah.
root, the root
Yeah.
is emotional, mental,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we are what
spiritual.
we eat, basically. So yeah, it's and also birth trauma. You know, people who are born by regular vaginal delivery, their babies have a completely different microbiome, a different set of bacteria in their gut than one that comes out with via C-section too. So that's a consideration. And antibiotics, we didn't have that when in your great grandparents' day too, and that really has done a number on um, the GI microbiome.
Yes, because he says that with canceling out not just the bacteria that you want to get rid of, but canceling out all bacteria. And then he says, and when you have that over and over again, so if somebody's chronically taking a lot of antibiotics, then he says the bacteria doesn't grow back. It's learning a different pattern. So it's not growing back the same. So your body may not be, or your microbiome is not structured the same as what it naturally was at one time.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, people with a completely normal microbiome, they will actually donate their poop. So you can have a poop transplant, people. And they've done this on a number of people with chronic diseases, and the chronic disease disappeared completely.
Erik, he goes, that's some
I
good
knew he would
shit.
love that. Huh? Yeah.
He's been making jokes like that like for the past 10 minutes.
Of
But he's
course.
like, that is some good shit.
That's some good shit. That's funny. All right, so let me just tell you some of the things that I say. Oh gosh, there's so much. We also do not only the regular gastrointestinal tract, we completely um, um, make the oropharyngeal microbiome, in the case of females, vaginal microbiome, completely normal. We get rid of leaky gut syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, oh gosh, let me just read some of this. Um, uh, we get rid of gastrointestinal hypochlorhydria, get rid of all the pathogenic microorganisms. We rectify and put into perfect balance the signaling of beneficial microbiome with the host immune response. We target the immunoregulatory activity of beneficial bacteria in all of those three microbiomes. It's just the absorptive capacity of the intestinal microvilli. We work with that too. So there's a lot. So I'll just read you.
Mm-hmm.
So all right, are you ready to take questions
Mm-hmm.
from the community? Now, this is not all
Mm-hmm.
just about the GI microbiome either. It's other. Okay, Erik, what is the spiritual meaning behind our relationship with bacteria that form our microbiome? Interesting question.
What's the relationship with the bacteria?
Yeah.
Well, He says, we've got, like we were just saying before, he says there's the a spiritual relationship, there's a physical component to it, an emotional and a mental component to it. Um, he says that most people that have a high bacteria level have a resistance in their life. And so he's saying that it's like a resistance and denial are two of the biggest emotional or spiritual causes to bacteria. Um,
Fascinating.
he's also saying bacteria is also, he says, part of the reason why we have difficulty getting rid of bacteria is because our mind connects to frustration with bacteria. So he's saying like anger. So not all bacteria is bad, but we have a subconscious belief of bacteria as something that we need to get rid of.
Oh no, there's so many good ones.
Mhm.
All right, what is the spiritual purpose behind autoimmune conditions like celiac disease? And will they ever find a cure for that one?
He says yes, and he says that so with celiac disease, he says it's not being able to break down proteins, um, or not being able to break down proteins in food, um, specific food. So that's dairy,
Gluten, maybe too.
gluten, not being able to break it down. He says this has to do with digestion in life. He says children that have this are generally carrying it forward from parents. And
Okay.
he's talking about having something in their system, genetic in their system. And he says, will it be cured in our lifetime? Yes. He says that a lot of that will have to do with what's happening over the next 10 years
Mm.
and our change in not only food production, but also our change in how we relate to food,
Right.
how we relate to the body.
Yeah, we don't do the ancient grains anymore. We have very highly processed wheat, and they say in this scientific article that autoimmune diseases are more a factor of the inheritance of the familial microbiome rather than the genetics behind it. So
Hmm.
I thought that was
Hmm.
interesting. Okay, what causes and heals gastroparesis? And does like CBD help that? My sister who had horrible diabetes, yeah, she suffered from gastroparesis, something fierce.
Is that inflammation? Like he's showing me a lot of inflammation in the stomach lining. Is
Well,
that like
that's gastritis, but gastroparesis is more like your gut, your stomach won't empty, basically. The nerve supply to it is all messed up because of, for example, the diabetes.
because what he's showing me is like a okay, just wait, let me hear what he has to say.
Okay.
He's giving me some images here and he's showing me like the stomach lining and messages are not being sent.
Oh,
It's like
yes,
there's a
neurological.
disconnection or messages not being sent.
That's right.
So he's talking about having to take care of the inflammation or
Okay.
inflammation in the stomach, inflammation in the body to be able to start to work on the messages being
Okay.
sent.
All right. Is it the CBD help heal that?
CBD can help treat it.
Okay.
Yes.
Does apple cider vinegar work with IBS? I don't know if they mean irritable bowel syndrome or inflammatory bowel.
He says
Problem.
more
Bowel.
with inflammatory,
Okay.
more inflammatory. Mhm.
What are the predominant? Oh, you're gonna love this one, Eric. What are the predominant biological factors concerning this hard, oversized properties of feces? I ask this because some people struggle with excretion and/or clogged toilets. That's a plumber's dream, girl. It's funny.
Yeah, I won't even get into some of what he says because he's pretty funny when it comes to some of this stuff here. But What he's saying is, he says, well, there's a couple things. He goes, believe it or not, genetics do play a part in this.
Okay.
He goes, not too many not too many family members get together and compare their size of shit.
Oh
But
yeah, my kids used to send pictures of theirs to each other. So
okay, okay, okay. But he says, but it's funny that you say that because he's like, but some do, but
yeah.
some do. But he said there is a genetic factor to it, and it also has to do with he says like the what the intestinal um how it's shaped or
Oh, the
what it's
lumen, when
able
it's
to
like
hold.
megacolon,
Yeah.
like yeah, dilated.
hmm
Yeah,
So
that'll
he
do
says
that
that
too.
it
Yeah.
has some of that, but he also says that food and also what is in the food, because there's some things that are not as digestible
Oh yeah, that's true.
as others that are in our food. And he says,
Yeah.
and believe it or not, guys, he says a lot of things that we eat, even when we think they're good for us, you know, are not.
Like
And
what?
he says, and are not, he's talking about particularly foods like that we buy that are packaged, and he's showing like advertised as like I can see like non-GMO,
Oh yeah.
non, you know, and so there's still properties, and he even said some additives that make meat or things plump up, like that
Oh,
make them like
okay.
antibiotics and things
Oh
that make
yeah. Oh,
food
that's
so
fun.
it looks better. Like he says,
Oh yeah.
um,
Oh God.
like looks tastier, looks
Yeah.
better, and that our body doesn't digest it the same. He says, and in the same way that this is size, this can also cause constipation
Yeah.
and problems too within the body if you're susceptible to that, or
That's
you're, he says, if you're backed up and full of shit.
that's because the spiritual reason is they're full of shit.